You've probably heard stories of artists who lose everything after life blindsides them. But Jo Vincent's story is different. She survived 2 strokes and somehow turned that recovery into the most creative chapter of her life. If you're an artist struggling to find your voice or get noticed, her journey shows what's possible when everything else falls apart. In this interview, you'll see how she rebuilt her identity through art, found her audience through licensing, and developed a voice that's impossible to ignore. So by the end, you'll understand her work and maybe your own in a whole new way without waiting for a crisis to force that clarity. Jo, could you take us back to the moment after your stroke? What was it like realising that your life had changed?
Horrible. To be honest, I'd been ill for 6 months and I didn't know why, and now I had a heart infection and had a stroke, and it was just so shocking because I was only 26, and to be honest, horrible and denial was probably how it felt. I can't quite believe it was happening, and part of me didn't really understand the enormity at that time. It was a life-changing event. I was in just poorly and didn't really understand it was going to be forever, if that makes sense.
So it was more than one stroke.
Yeah, I had a second one 2 weeks later when I was in hospital being treated for the heart infection, and that one was major. That one, I lost my speech, my swallow, paralysed the entire left side of my body, and it was awful because that one happened while I was awake. So I woke up dribbling, and then within an hour I felt myself losing everything, to the point I was able to tell the nurses, I know I'm having a second stroke. And they couldn't, at that time, because it's 20 years ago, there was nothing they could do to stop it. And it was due to an infection, that a bit of the infection had gone from my heart to my brain. So there was absolutely nothing they could do other than sit with me while I deteriorated. And so even though that one was massive, again, I was still in denial because I just thought, you know what, I'm young, I'll be able to overcome this. And even though I was being told by doctors, you're probably not going to speak again, you definitely won't be a teacher ever again, you might have to be fed through tubes indefinitely. My brain inside couldn't believe that at all, and luckily nor did my family, and we had the attitude of, right, I'm going to do whatever I can do to get well and we'll see, rather than believing this is it, I'm permanently seriously disabled now. I just thought, you know what, I'm going to do as much work as I possibly can and see where it gets me. And luckily, as you can tell, it's got me quite a long way, because I'm sitting here talking to you, where I had about 18 months where I literally wouldn't be able to talk in a full paragraph sort of thing.
So you're 26 years old, young woman, you've been looking forward to a life, probably developing a career. What was it you were doing? What was your life plan at the time that you had suffered the first stroke?
Basically, I was training to be a teacher. I'd done my degree already, and I was working in a FE college in a department for people with learning difficulties and disabilities, and I was trained to be a SEN teacher and help them do independent skills, life skills. So I was mid-training. In the day I was training teacher, and in the evenings I was doing the actual studying to be a teacher. And it happened bang in the middle of all of that.
What was your personal life like? What was your life situation at that point?
I'd just come back from travelling in Australia, backpacking, which was wonderful. I'd just broken up with a partner that I'd been with for a very long time. And I had amazing friends, and I lived an hour away from my parents, and I'm really close with my parents. And so I was like, I suppose, like any 26-year-old, I was working hard and I was playing hard. I enjoyed going out and going to the pub and, you know, having a big social life, normal 26-year-old social life in a city. So, and I was, like I say, I had luckily for me, I had a big group of friends that had gone through uni. A lot of us had stayed in Birmingham. So I felt like life, although it was tricky because I was poorly and I kept going to doctors saying I'm poorly for the last 6 months, I still was really enjoying life.
You went from that then to having to move back in with your family.
That was hard because I had spent 3 months in hospital and then I had to go back to my parents, and I love my parents, but I hadn't lived with them since I was 17. So it was a massive change, and although I spent a lot of time with them, they also didn't have their kids at home anymore. They travelled, they had jobs, and their entire life changed as well. My dad stopped working because he could, and my mum carried on teaching, and I had to live with them, and it was really hard for all of us. Because we weren't used to living together. They were used to their life, I was used to mine. I actually couldn't speak at that point. I was right. Everything I had said had to be written down or tapped on a board. And they were incredibly positive and really, I don't want to sound negative, because without them, if I didn't have that support, I don't think I would be so well, because basically my mum took on the role of, right, I'm going to be the physiotherapist. Dad took on the role, I'm going to be the carer and the speech therapist, and we would do all day, every day sessions of therapy at home. We didn't just do it when the professionals came in and helped, if that makes sense. So I would do physio, I would do speech therapy, and I would do things in the house, try to do things, independent things, grate a carrot, cut a carrot. So all day, my day was set around improving my independence again. Walking, exercise. I would go into hospital every week to do physiotherapy. So basically, the three of us, our entire life turned into, how do we get Jo to being able to go back to her house and be independent? So a lot of work.
What had you been told about your prognosis for a recovery?
Basically, that I had unrealistic expectations, because my dad put a sign behind me in the hospital that said, I will walk again, I will talk again, I will teach again. And the doctors kept saying to me and my parents, that is unrealistic and you're going to harm yourself more by believing something that's not going to happen. And I said, and I've still got the books where I wrote when I couldn't talk, I kept saying, well, I'll try, and if I can't, that's fine, but I'm certainly not going to try. I'm going to try my hardest, and if I can't teach again, fine, I'll find another way. But for now, this negative, oh, you can't, it doesn't fit into my family's ethos of life. Life can be difficult, but you can keep working, keep trying. You can do more than you think, if that makes sense.
What did you learn about yourself at that time, as you're recovering and beginning to rebuild your life?
The first thing I learned, in the 6 months leading up to it, I'd worked, I'd enjoyed life, and I had, unbeknownst to me, a heart infection. So that gave me a sense of, number one, I told everyone I was ill, and no one believed me. Number two, I carried on working till the day of my stroke. And so I knew I was quite resilient. That made me feel quite resilient and quite strong, actually, if I'm honest. It made me feel like, okay, if you can do that, you can work for 6 months being poorly and go to doctors that don't believe you, and this happened, I believe, I felt quite strong in myself, if that makes sense. And also, I think what it made me realise is, even though I've got the support of everybody, friends, family, this is me, I'm the one in pain, I'm the one suffering, I'm the one that can't do the things I used to do, and I can make a choice here. I can feel sorry for myself, or I can do the best. And I also believe in my heart that because I worked with young people that had disabilities and overcome stuff every day, so my entire career and stuff had been with people that were doing more than they should be able to, really, and had such positive approaches to life, and they would always find a way around or change, do something differently if they couldn't do it the way an able-bodied person could. And that was always in my mind. I know so many young people that overcome so much. If they can do it, I can do it. So they were a little bit of my kind of inspiration, if that makes sense. If they can do it, I can do it.
Did you have an interest in art?
No. Is the correct answer? No, not really.
So how did it happen? How did you start to discover your creativity?
When I couldn't talk or do anything, and I was in hospital and the days were long, A friend of mine bought me a sketchbook and some colouring pencils. And at that time, you're not allowed anymore, but at that time, you were allowed to have flowers and things bought. And you have. So I basically, in between therapy, in between sleeping, started basically drawing with colour pencils the flowers that people bought me to cheer me up. And I found it really relaxing, actually, because it was just something that wasn't. It didn't. I don't know how to explain it, because obviously it's in a stroke brain. It wasn't like the rest of the therapy. Everything else had to have conscious effort, and the effort wore me out. This was like a rest from my brain when I was awake. It was relaxing. It didn't take energy, because when you're relearning everything with your brain, it's really fatigued, really tired. Where this just was the only thing apart from sleep that felt like, oh, this is relaxing, this is okay, this is calming, this is away from stroke as well. It's nothing to do with my stroke. I was just a person able to draw some flowers. That sounds silly, doesn't it, now I said it out loud, but I was me, I suppose. It's the only time I wasn't stroke, Joe.
No, it doesn't sound silly at all. It's really interesting. So it's like it was a new thing to you, but it was the bit of you that felt, just from what you're saying, if I'm kind of reading in between the lines, and you correct me if I've got this wrong, but it sounds like that art, that moment of discovering your creativity in hospital with the gift that your friend had brought, felt like you rediscovering who you were before the stroke through something you actually hadn't done before, through art.
Yeah.
Art was a connection to the old you.
My mind felt like it had done before my stroke, if that makes sense. Even though I couldn't speak, my internal voice was the same, and it did exactly that. It just felt like this is something that is not related to stroke, and there was no effort in it. Now, I know lots of other stroke people that found art after stroke. I know of a guy that paints his whole house over. So I think something in the injury of my brain opened this part of me, because that's opened up a part of me that maybe was always there. Like I suppose what it felt like when you're a child and you do paintings and you draw and you colour. There's no pressure, is there? There's no thought. You're not doing it to sell a painting. You're not doing it to make something. As a child, you're just doing creative things because it feels nice. So I think it opened up that bit of me, that there was no purpose to it other than to enjoy myself and to calm myself and to just relax in the same way you do when you're a child. So actually it probably was a part of me that you give up as a child, don't you? You turn into teenagers, and unless you're an artist, all creativity kind of gets put to one side. Yet we all do it in infant school, don't we? We all do painting, we all do all of that stuff. So I think it was that part of me, that there was no purpose for it other than to enjoy myself. And there was it was hard to enjoy myself when everything was broken and everything was hard to do. So, and the way it didn't make me fatigued made me know, right, you've got to keep doing this thing. This thing is good for you. And I really enjoyed it and still do. And I literally haven't stopped since. Don't get me wrong, I have to say, what I was drawing was rubbish. Do you know what I mean? It was rubbish. That I had no skills, but the actual process was just wonderful.
Well, I mean, that doesn't always matter, and certainly it wouldn't have mattered at that particular time. And what you were saying reminded me of a quotation. I don't know if you've heard this. An artist is a child who has survived. And I think that there is something about that which is true, that to be an artist you have to be in touch with the kind of creativity that actually most adults lose as they get older. Society
puts it to one side. We have to, we can't spend time doing that. It gets to a point you have to be learning or productive or working, and then the time gets less and less where you can do it. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, do you know what? I've never described it like that before, but actually now it definitely was that. I just could do with no purpose. I didn't even show people anything I was doing. It was just when, in between visits, in between therapy, just create. It was lovely.
And how did it become, so it grew from that point, and at what point did you realise that you were now a professional artist?
That's a big jump, isn't it? Basically, I probably for about 5 years just painted for my... So when I got home, I started painting. My parents bought me up paints and I did it at their house. And I think at year 10 years, so what I started using my art in my classroom with my kids when I went back to work, and we did more art and I did more art, and that was lovely. But for me to become when I realised I was an artist, at year 10, me and my students decided, right, we're going to do a celebration that I'm 10 years a stroke survivor. We're going to do a charity stall, and we're going to make art for that to sell it to people and give the money to Stroke Society, Stroke Association, sorry. And I did a lot of work then, and they went like that. So I did it with my kids. They had stuff for sale, and every single thing I had, we did a Facebook page and everything. It just kept selling, and I was like, oh, people liked my art. At the time, I was much more realistic. It was like seascapes and flowers and landscapes that are really, really quite realistic. But yeah, everything sold. And then I thought, oh, I'm an artist. And at the same time, my boss thought she's an artist. And then instead of teaching life skills and independent skills, I then wrote an art program to help my students to use art for their well-being and kind of capture what I'd captured in art, because for me, I was still doing it because it made me feel well and relaxed and all, stress relieving and all. So then I wrote an art program for my creative students, and then it took off from there, really. So I became an artist both within work, recognised within work, and at home.
Because you'd been able to go back to being an SEN teacher eventually.
Yeah, part-time.
Part-time.
And I have to say, I had so many wonderful students, and once they started being free with their creativity, I think there's there's got to be a link between disability and creativity. I don't know the science behind it, but there must, because some of my students, particularly people with autism, honestly, the work, once they try and let the worries and concerns go, the work that my students created was absolutely beautiful. For the 10 years I taught art, because my whole ethos was, right, we're not doing this to make a painting or to make a thing. We're doing this for the process and how the process of making art makes you feel, makes you manage your stress, makes you manage your behaviour, and so there was no pressure in this course we were doing. And as a result, people were making amazing art because they weren't worried about making amazing art. It sounds backwards going forward, but when you realise, right, if you sit down and you want to make a painting, there's all this pressure in it. If you sit down and go, right, I'm going to do this, right, because I feel stressed today, and I'm going to, enjoy the feeling of making this thing, it's completely different. And so, and also I have to say, when I was on the same journey, wasn't I? Because I then was starting to sell work outside of, teaching, and I was doing the Facebook pages and all that. As much as I was teaching my kids, my students, oh my God, they were teaching me. It was like and also I think because I was a disabled teacher, although I don't look disabled, I was very open about my problems. They knew I can't do certain activities because it requires two hands. It was a really safe space for all of us to learn and grow and make mistakes in our art and make rubbish art. You need to make a lot of rubbish art to be an artist, to make the good ones.
I know from personal experience that that's true, Jo.
Yeah.
So what do you make now?
I now am an abstract landscape painter. I went from being very representative then into a period of just abstract, pure abstraction, and I luckily enough had a Arts Council grant, and then through that process I've kind of realised I'm a abstract landscape painter. So what's happened now is I've merged my beginnings, my middle, and now the result is I feel like I found myself now because I do abstract landscape and abstract florals. So it's not completely representative, but it is. And also my practice massively involves going out plein air because I just love that, the calmness of that, sitting outside painting. being absorbing the landscape, looking at. I do use photos as well at some point because we live in England and it rains. But yeah, going outside and actually painting and then taking those studies into the studio and working from them, that's kind of what I do. So they say nature is really good for your well-being. That is so true. So for me, I put the two things together, going out in nature and painting, because I obviously, due to my disability, I can't walk really, really far. So being able to sit and absorb the landscape and paint it kind of makes me feel like I'm enjoying more of it than I can. I can't walk up a mountain, for example.
Yeah. So, and obviously I'm seen a lot of your work in the Vieunite art library. Just looking up there because I have one of my canvases up there, and I've got some of your flower paintings on that screen and landscapes on the other. So very familiar with your work, and it's wonderful to have your work in the Vieunite art library. But just to sort of wrap up this section on your personal journey from having one life plan to then a completely another through this period of great change and enormous challenge, what have you learned through your own life that you would want to pass on to somebody that's facing that kind of really sort of stark moment?
Well, that's a big question. That's a really big question. Don't always believe doctors, number one. Sorry, but they were wrong about me. And I would say that don't give up on dreams, just adjust them. Just try and change them and adapt them to fit where you're at. And it might take longer than you hoped for, and it might be harder than you hoped. But along the way, like me, you might find something that actually is completely different, but actually more you than the thing you were doing and wanted to do at the beginning. So one of the reasons I've given up teaching now is I want my life, my creativity, my art. And I would never have said I was going to be an artist, but all those steps led me to here. And although I'm disabled, although I had faced lots of difficulties, pain, fatigue, challenges, and that, I'm not perfect, sometimes it really is upsetting, I have gained so much by this happening to me. If I magically, woke up one morning and all my stuff was gone, I was able-bodied and no stroke stuff, would I go back into the teaching system and work full-time and go back to the career path I wanted? And the answer would be no. I would never give up the time now, even if I became able-bodied, for the money. I have, as a disabled person, you end up quite often earning less money because you can't work as many hours as a able-bodied person. But actually, the time I've had and think time to enjoy life and friends and people and activities that please me, I wouldn't give that up now.
For years, Jo made her living one job at a time: commissions, gallery shows, teaching gigs. But every time a project ended, the money stopped too. She'd wake up back at zero, starting from scratch. Now, if you're an artist, you're going to know that grind. Always creating, but struggling to build momentum. Then, through a chance encounter, Jo took a risk on licensing her art, and suddenly her art started showing up in places she never imagined. In this conversation, you'll see how she made that leap, what changed behind the scenes, and why it's still paying off, so you can stop chasing one-off sales and start building a career where your audience scales itself. Jo, you've been with Vieunite from the very beginning. So I think I first met you about 3 years ago in Nottingham at our launch exhibition at the art school there. Before Vieunite, how did you share your art?
I would do local exhibitions in libraries, in cafes, and do stuff for my students. So that kind of thing. Mainly Facebook and in-person stuff. Could
you describe what how Vieunite works, what it is, and what it does for you?
It's how I perceive it is basically I scan or photograph my paintings and I upload them to Vieunite, and then people that own the screens, they can buy your paintings, they can buy a variety of your paintings, and then choose depending on the mood, or if they've changed the room, or they can have a variety of paintings rather than be one painting, if that makes sense. And what I do feel in both my original just abstract artwork, it's another way of having original art still enjoyed by people. And I love the fact that people could go into Vieunite, buy 5 or 6 pieces, and then choose when they display them, where they display them. It's so interesting to me as well to see how different sometimes and beautiful my artwork looks on these screens. It really makes them pop. It's really textured painting. So when you see the original, it's really textured, but the screens really show that, really gives it that depth, as if you're looking at the original painting. It doesn't take away from the original painting. And I also think that it's really important for artists' work to be showed in lots of different ways. We're coming into a digital world now. Everything's digitalised. And I think as an artist, being open to sharing your work in many ways is so important. It's actually another way of embracing the digital world as an artist and making sure artwork, real original artwork that's painted by hand, is still getting to lots of audiences. I feel really quite strongly about that, because whenever people think, oh, you're in a digital forum, oh, it must be digital artwork. No, it keeps that original feeling of you can see this is handmade, that you can see the mistakes, not the mistakes, but the happy accidents that happen in landscape abstract painting. All of it is there as if you're looking at the original piece.
When I came into my office this morning, where I am now, I noticed that you had uploaded, I don't know if it was overnight, but certainly within the last week, a whole load of new work to the library, and I've now got it on my screens at the moment. You've got some vertical flower studies and some, actually mainly flower studies, wasn't it? A couple of horizontal flower studies. Those are new works, and I've got them on my screens at the moment. So you're still clearly very engaged with Vieunite. What is it that's kept you engaged?
I think because I was there in the beginning, and my work changed from very abstraction into the landscape, I want the world to see the new art I'm doing, and I think it's important to put your art out in as many ways as you can. So what I did I wasn't sure actually if my new landscape work, how it would look. So I kind of uploaded everything, and so I basically did a batch of, okay, this is my new work now, let's see what happens. And then the reason I've done studies and new work, the floral stuff is all new work. And I kind of like to batch cook, if that makes sense. I like to put them all up together as if it's like there's a little series. And I just think you guys have been so supportive of me as an artist. It's important. And I still believe it's so important to enter into the digital world as an artist, not just through social media. Yes, we all share work through social media, but I think giving people opportunities to have your work in different ways in the modern world is exciting, it's interesting. I'm reaching people that would never see my work otherwise, I believe.
Yeah, so is it more about the audience than the income, or is it both?
I think for me it's more about the audience and engaging with different people, actually, if I'm honest.
Because through Vieunite you can, I think, reach people that otherwise you're unlikely to, because we've got users all over the world. But we've also got a very new, innovative project which is about to launch called Viewpoint, and you're among the first batch of artists that we work with whose work we're going to be showing on the Viewpoint screen. So this is a very large digital screen on the exterior of the new Allsea Technologies headquarters on the former Longbridge car plant, just off the A38. So it's a major artery in Birmingham, and it's a site that you know well, I think.
Yes, again, a bit like how I came to Vieunite. It all feels very, meant to be. Basically, the Allsea building overlooks the college I worked in for 11 years. So all my colleagues, when they come out from work, they're going to have to be able to see the exhibition on the screen, the Viewpoint screen. And I think also that's another reason I've stayed engaged with you guys. You're really interested in doing new things, innovative things, and getting work out in different ways. So I think that's exciting. I'm really excited about this because it's something like I've never done before. And if I wasn't in with working with Vieunite, it wouldn't be an opportunity I had. So it's really exciting. So yeah, definitely. It's exactly 2 seconds from the college I worked in. So meant to be.
That must feel kind of special.
It feels really special because obviously I walked away from the college.
Yeah.
To be an artist just feels like, oh, old life, new life.
Yeah, wonderful. Sounds perfect. So how do you feel about digital screens being used to showcase local creativity and make art more visible to everyone in the community?
I think it's vital, absolutely vital, because the whole world is digital. Young people have their face in their screens all day, every day, and may never step into an art gallery and may never know that they are interested in art or creativity and may never ever engage in it simply because they don't go into the right environment for it. And I think showing it in the community will spark someone's interest. It'll make someone think, that if that's a local artist, that's something I can do as well. And I think it will just engage people that are not engaged in art. And I think also it will show other artists there are other ways, more modern ways of sharing your art with the world. And I also think, sharing your art is not about selling your art. It's about showing the world your viewpoint and how you see the world, and not just a photograph of the world, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really important right now for us all to create space to think about how other people see the world, what other people's reality and lives are like. There's a lot of tension and friction in the world right now, and one of the things that art can do is create a sense of shared experience, and appreciating other people's point of view is really important.
And I think it's also a reminder that art matters still. The process of art is good for human beings. We've been creating things, since we were created, so to speak. And I think it's important for art to be in the community so that people are reminded of that in a way, it's ironic, because what I was going to say is take yourself away from the screen and create something with your hands and do the process. So it's kind of showing people that are lost in their screens something that still has value, and you can do art and still be in the modern world. It doesn't have to be digital art for you to be digitalized, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vieunite is a licensing platform. It's a place where artists can share their art and gain an income from it by having an audience display it on their screens at home. But for you, it's mainly, as you said, about the discovery. It's about other people being able to see your work that matters most. Just to conclude this section, for artists that feel stuck or invisible right now, what advice would you have for them when it comes to picking a licensing partner to work with?
Just put your art up. Don't wait till you think it's perfect. Don't wait until you think you've made that masterpiece. Just start sharing your work on a platform like this, and then the more you do it, the more confident and happy you are with the work you're uploading, if that makes sense. Don't wait, just do, is my
wonderful.
Don't wait, just do it.
Jo Vincent spent 20 years teaching art to students with profound learning disabilities. But over time, the system that once gave her purpose started draining the creativity that made her love teaching in the first place. If you've ever felt torn between serving your students and protecting your own spark, you're going to feel this one deeply. Because Jo hit the moment every creative teacher dreads, deciding whether to stay for the stability or finally take the leap. Her story will help you see how to make that call for yourself and how to keep your joy alive before the system quietly takes it from you. Jo, when you were working as a teacher, what was your day-to-day like?
So it was a combination of practical art, some theory, teaching some theory, obviously the normal stuff, marking, reports and all that kind of admin stuff that goes along with teaching. Also, at the same time, although I was teaching art, these people, young people, had difficulties and disabilities, and so it was also providing us through creativity, helping them to learn independent skills, self-advocacy, communication skills, those kind of things that were intertwined in the course. So they were learning those independent skills and those life skills as well. And building confidence in their creativity, and the fact that actually for a lot of young people that have a disability, creative avenues might be perfect for them to have a career in. And I tailored the course in a way that those that were achieved quite highly could then go into the mainstream college and do things like foundation art and mainstream art courses with the support. So that the hope was they would use my course as a stepping stone to be confident in a mainstream environment, get confident with their creativity, and then be able to move on and do the mainstream courses. And then
because you were working with
have, life as a creative professional in some capacity.
Because you were working with students who had they were called SEN students, weren't they? Which is an acronym. What does that stand for?
Special needs education.
Yeah.
Or special educational needs. Sorry, it changes all the time. So basically anybody that had a learning difficulty, neurodiversion, disabilities, things like cerebral palsy, autistic people with ADHD. So anyone that had an additional need, basically, I like to say, that just had an additional need that needs to be supported in education, more than going to a mainstream big group, no support. Kind of, they needed more attention, smaller groups, those kind of things.
And when did you start to feel a tension between your desire to teach creativity and to teach creatively and feeling boxed in?
The course became more successful, my students were doing incredibly well, and I started having teacher trainers in the class with me, and it started to be much more about writing what we were doing than doing what we were doing. It became very much about proving what we were providing, or not, writing a lot of reports and a lot of admin around that. And that took away from me, took me away from the classroom, and it took me away from the students, and the time, they were shrinking the time to do the practical skills. And that was where the students were gaining the most, actually. As a holistic person, the best learning was coming from those creative activities, and it was becoming more and more about theory, less and less about the creativity. And there was also becoming a real clear difficulty with getting our students moving from our department into mainstream. And they had the skills, they had the ability. Yes, they would need extra support. And I found that really disheartening. I didn't like having to battle to get students the opportunity to go into the next level. And I found it heartbreaking, actually, that there was clearly a divide between people with disabilities and mainstream. And as a person with disability, I found that shocking and difficult. And also what was happening is when I started teaching, we had groups between 6 and 8. And then that, because of funding, cost cuts and everything, the groups over the years just grew and grew and grew. And eventually it was like 16 in a group that used to be 8, in a room that housed 8, and trying to do practical activities with people that have got either physical disabilities or challenging behaviour in art. Sometimes it wasn't dangerous because I could manage it, I was an experienced teacher, but it wasn't giving those students the same education I was giving them 5 years ago. And at the same time, my own health was deteriorating, and the stress of that increased my health deterioration. And I started to recognise I wasn't the same teacher. I wasn't able to give the same to 16 people that I was able to give to 8 people. And I realised I did not want to be one of these teachers. I didn't want to be a teacher that basically stayed in teaching knowing I wasn't that great. I was getting to be a poor teacher because the system, the restrictions were changing so much and my health was deteriorating. So I realised actually twofold. Number one, I'm not able to be the teacher I was and give value and help my students in the way I used to. And number two, this job now is so stressful and so disheartening, it's making me more poorly. It was really affecting my health and my health was really declining. And I recognised for my own well-being, I would be better. But when I wasn't at work and I was doing my own creative life, and I was doing my own art because I was pursuing that and painting, and that was giving me joy and making me feel well. And being a teacher was making me feel quite unwell and quite stressed. So that kind of where the box, it was like, do you know what? I can stay here and do badly by my students, or I can make that leap of, do you know what? Maybe in the community, in different ways, I can use my educational skills to help people find the joy of creativity, but I can't do that anymore within the restrictions of formal education.
Was there a specific moment that crystallised your decision to leave?
Yes, there was one particular. Number one, it was my health. I have to say, my own health. There was a moment in a classroom where I realised I'm not well enough for this anymore. It's actually, my heart condition, my whole condition was deteriorating as I get older, as expected. And the stress of being in that classroom with all these people in a small space, the realisation that this is making me poorly was number one.
So what happened? What did that feel like? How did you know?
I knew because I was cross. I had a moment where I was being cross with the very people I was trying to help. And I wasn't cross with them. I was tired, I was stressed, I was in the background in the office being told, write this report, do this, all this paperwork has to be done, it has to be done now. Come out of the classroom, leave your classroom, leave it with the support workers, leave it with the trainee teachers, and come and write reports about what I'm doing in the classroom. And I wasn't in the classroom doing it, if that makes sense. I didn't have the time and the energy to do what they were telling me to write about. And I got cross with a group, not inappropriately, but I got cross with a group of students that were unsettled. And in that moment, I realised those students were unsettled because I was unsettled. Right. I was stressed and I was projecting that stress in that classroom. And that is not fair or okay with me as a person. Because they come to that class to learn creativity, to be stress-free for their well-being, for them to manage their difficulties, their challenging behaviours, their stresses. They do not need a stressed teacher projecting their stress in that classroom. And in that moment, it was like, do you know what? And I literally went into my line manager's office and said, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I'm not a good teacher anymore. I'm so stressed. I'm making my students stress and they don't deserve that.
Tough. That's tough. I mean, how did that feel? That must have been heartbreaking.
It was like, and then I went through the process of leaving, so that took time. It was like having my stroke and losing my career all over again, initially, because I loved doing my art at home. I loved doing my painting and selling my painting, but I also loved sharing that creativity with other students and watching that develop in them, watching them realise, oh my God, this is my thing. I can do this. Oh, I'm a sculptor, or I'm a painter, or I'm a cartoonist. That was such a joy for me. In fact, more of a joy than my own work. Getting the best out of my students, seeing what they could do, it was my joy. So when I decided I'm not well enough to do this anymore, it did feel like the second coming of losing my original plan, my full-time teaching career, all over again. And it felt very much it was to do with my disability. It was the system, but my own disability was getting to the point, okay, you're not well enough of this. So it was the same reason 20 years later that I had to stop. Now I go, oh, that's a great decision and I should have made it, and I'm loving it as an artist and I don't regret it in any way, shape or form. But it was heartbreaking to make that step at that time. It wasn't something I did lightly. Other colleagues thought that I was crazy and said just do work and do less and do. I just couldn't do that. I couldn't be a bad teacher. So I knew I had no choice but to leave, really. But it hurt. Really
And
hurt.
was it frightening?
Yeah, really frightening. It's bizarre. People won't understand if you're not a teacher. It felt like I've lost my identity because I've always been, I'm an art teacher and an artist. I've always said I'm an art teacher, an artist second. So it felt like I'd lost a part of my identity and I didn't know what I was going to do. And obviously, everyone lives in this world. You know, things are getting more expensive, blah, blah, blah. We all have financial things we have to pay for. I was worried financially. Will I be able to make a living? Will it be enough of a living? Because obviously I am limited on what work I can do because I'm disabled. I can't go and do a 60-hour week. As an artist, I would still have to pace and rest and all those things. So there was fear of who am I and how I'm going to pay for my life. A bit like in the beginning with my stroke, I thought, well, you've got to try. You've got to try and see how it goes. And then if you fail, that's fine. But if you don't try, you will never know. But initially, in the time of making the decision, in time of leaving teaching, it was scary.
For most people, one really massive life-changing period would be enough. You've been through two. And you're investing entirely in your own creativity and in your creative practice. Is there anyone or anything that you particularly want to give a shout out about or share with viewers?
I think all artists actually, all other creatives I've ever come across, artists are such helpful, nurturing people that want to see each other succeed. And there's lots of forums in which I'm involved in where I mix with other artists and it's just really nurturing. Particularly at the moment, I've again been poorly. I've had another bloody diagnosis wrong with my heart. And for a little bit, I thought I couldn't paint. But other artists kept, through social media and through a membership I'm part of, kind of said, come on, I know you feel crap, but paint. Just paint a bit more. And I had about 3 or 4 weeks where I couldn't paint. And people, other artists, friends, kind of pushed me to paint. And then now I'm back to painting, and I don't know why I stopped for that period of time. And one particular lady called Sam Borton, I worked for her in a membership, and she kept saying to me, "You're not painting. You're not doing your own practice. Make sure you paint." And that was really helpful and really nurturing. And everybody on that membership, actually, it's a community of plein air painters. It just communicating with them, just having them in my phone, so to speak, to interact with all the time, has been a really positive influence on me as an artist, as a person, but also my practice. It feels like by being part of that membership, I'm really blossoming. And really getting brave with making rubbish art, but then finding bits that, that's lovely, that's me. So that's really helpful. They've been really helpful. As in terms of, I can't name all the friends, right? But I've got a group of friends that have been with me since my stroke, before my stroke, and family. Without them, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be surviving. Actually, I get a lot of support, physical support, emotional support from my friends and family, and I can't name them all. They know who they are, but I'm really well supported as a person, as a disabled person, and as an artist. My friends have always prompted me to be creative because they can see more than anyone the benefits that has on my well-being. Basically, it's given me a purpose to my life. My art's given me a purpose that obviously I kind of lost it, didn't I, with my stroke. You lose, like you've said, I'm losing my full-time career and stuff. And so everybody, in any way they can, carrying canvases, putting canvases up in cafes, printing stuff, you know. I've been supported in lots of ways in my art career by friends and family, because there are stuff as a disabled artist that I can't do, that I struggle with. I cannot hang an exhibition. It's physically impossible for me. And then, so my friends and family have done that for me. So yeah, all my friends and family, they know who they are. I'm very lucky, you know, but I also want to say, I think my stroke affected them gigantically as well. To see that change can happen overnight in a person, it has had a massive impact on my friends and family as well, good and bad.
Right. It's affected everyone around you.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah.
Massively. And it's been hard because I don't like that, the negative impact on people. People have been, you know, recently I've had a diagnosis to do with my heart, and my friends are really, really worried. Now, we don't have to worry. It's not an immediate problem. But seeing them, just adding worry to them is hard, you know. I don't want them to worry. I don't want to be the person that, oh God, yeah, we've got to go through another operation, guys. And I do recognise that although they can't understand what it feels like for me, it's hard for them. It's hard for them to watch me being sick. It's hard for them to watch me having to go through operations. It's hard for them having to watch me recover. You know, all of them, I know if they could, would just magically be better. So what they do is they just support me, support my art, support my choices. So I'm a very lucky lady, really, very, very lucky lady. My friends and family have played a major role in helping me to be who I am and keep reinventing myself. Every time my health puts me down and says, no, you can't do that anymore, they're all there helping me to reinvent myself. And that's lovely as well. That's exciting.
Jo, thank you so much for sharing so candidly about your life, your creativity, your health, and your journey so far. I know that everyone here at Vieunite is waiting to see what the next step is, and we really appreciate having your work in the library, so thanks.
Well, I really, really appreciate the fact you have my work. It's an honour to be part of Vieunite. I'm really grateful, thank you. Do you know what, though? I really, until this interview, I've never linked the fact I've opened up my child, haven't I? I've gone back to my childhood creativity. I've never really thought of it like that. That's fascinating to me. See, you learn something every day, don't you?